Right now, your brain is lying to you. Not in a maybe or sometimes way, constantly. Before this video ends, you're going to catch it doing it, on you. In fact, I'm going to set up a tiny experiment with your own mind in just a minute, and if you're like most people, you'll fall for it without even noticing. But hold that thought, because once you understand a few strange psychological facts about human behavior, three things happen at the same time. You start recognizing other people's patterns like you've got X-ray vision. You catch your own brain quietly manipulating your decisions, and you become a tiny bit harder to fool by ads, by social media, and honestly, by your own emotions. So here's the plan for this video. I'm going to walk you through several research-backed psychological quirks of the human mind. Some of them are comforting, some of them are a little creepy, and at least one will probably change how you think about your memories. And that little experiment with your brain? We'll trigger it right after you hear the first big fact. Let's start with something you've definitely felt. You walk into a room, your shirt has a stain, or your hair isn't doing what you told it to do, and you're sure everyone notices. You feel like a giant spotlight is following you around. Psychologists actually have a name for this, the spotlight effect. It's the tendency to dramatically overestimate how much other people notice us. In one famous study, researchers made college students walk into a room full of other students wearing a painfully uncool t-shirt, Barry Manilow's face of all things. The poor victims guessed that about 50% of the room would notice the shirt. In reality, only about a quarter of people did. Here's what that means for you, practically. The awkward thing you said at that party, most people forgot it 5 minutes later. That embarrassing outfit, half the room never even registered it. The tiny mistake in your presentation, you replay it in your head way more than anyone else ever will. Everyone is too busy worrying about their spotlight. Now, here's the experiment I promised. Think back to the last time you felt painfully self-conscious. Maybe a Zoom call where you thought you looked bad, or a moment you stumbled over your words. Got it? Ask yourself, can you remember a single similar mistake from anyone else on that call? Probably not. Your brain is obsessed with your flaws, not theirs, and their brains are doing the same in reverse. That's the spotlight effect in real time.
Okay, next twist. Let's move from embarrassment to something heavier, rejection. You know that feeling when you're left out of a group chat, ghosted by someone you like, or excluded from a plan? It doesn't just feel bad emotionally, it feels physically painful. That's not a metaphor. Neuroscientists have put people into brain scanners and simulated social exclusion. For example, through a simple online ball-tossing game where partway through, the other players stop passing them the ball. When this happens, brain regions that are also involved in processing physical pain become more active. So when you say that rejection hurt, you're not being dramatic. Your brain is literally responding as if you've been physically hurt. Here's why that matters. You might overreact to social threats, reading too much into a delayed text or a neutral comment, because your brain is wired to treat exclusion as dangerous. You might stay in unhealthy situations just to avoid triggering that pain system. And you may underestimate how much your words or silence can hurt others. Now here's the weird part. Your brain evolved this way because for most of human history, getting kicked out of the group was a survival threat. Being alone meant less protection, less food, less help. So your brain equates "they don't want me" with "I might be in danger." Keep that in mind the next time your brain screams that a small social setback is the end of the world. It's using ancient software on a very modern problem. Quick question. How many people do you think you can maintain real relationships with? Not followers, not contacts, but people you could comfortably talk to, remember, and keep up with. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar looked at brain size and social group sizes in primates and extrapolated to humans. His estimate? About 150 meaningful relationships, a limit often called Dunbar number. Those 150 aren't all equal. Research suggests we tend to organize into layers. About 5 people in your innermost circle, the call at 3 a.m. people. Around 15 close friends. Roughly 50 you'd invite to a big party or weekend barbecue. And up to 150 you'd still recognize, chat with, and feel some social connection to. Beyond that, people start to drift into acquaintance territory. Here's the tension this creates. Your brain is built for 150, but your social media might show you hundreds or thousands of faces, opinions, and problems every single day. That mismatch can make you feel like you're failing socially, even when you're actually at your natural limit. Spread your attention so thin that no relationship feels deep, and create the illusion that everyone else has a massive, tight-knit tribe and you somehow don't. In reality, most people's emotional life revolves around a tiny inner circle, and that's exactly how the brain is wired to work. So if you've ever felt guilty for not keeping up with every old coworker, every distant cousin, every person you met once at a party, your brain literally cannot maintain all of that at a deep level. It's not a moral failure, it's a cognitive limit. And this sets up something strange we'll circle back to later. If your brain is so limited, why does it feel like certain ideas, words, or people suddenly show up everywhere? Hold that question, we're about to go there. Ever learn a new word? Hear about a specific car or discover a psychological term like gaslighting, and then it's suddenly everywhere? That weird glitch has a name, the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, also called the frequency illusion. Psychologists explain it as a two-step mind trick. Selective attention. Once something becomes relevant to you, your brain silently flags it as important and starts noticing it more. Confirmation bias. Every time you see it again, your brain goes, "See? It is everywhere," reinforcing the illusion. The actual frequency of the thing may not have changed at all. You changed. Marketers and media absolutely use this. The moment you start shopping for a certain brand or scrolling a particular niche, your feeds, ads, and even conversations seem full of it. It feels like the universe is sending you a sign. Often, it's just your attention system and algorithms holding hands. Here's the little mental twist. Now that you've heard the term Baader-Meinhof, there's a very good chance you'll notice it again this week, in an article, a TikTok, a random tweet. When that happens, don't panic. That's literally your brain doing exactly what we just described in real time. And now we're in an interesting place. You overestimate how much people notice you, spotlight effect. You underestimate how much your brain is filtering what you notice, frequency illusion. So what else is your brain doing behind your back? Let's mess with your memories next. We like to think of memory as a hard drive or a camera. It records, we replay. That's not how it works. Decades of research in cognitive psychology show that memory is reconstructive, not a perfect recording. Each time you recall something, your brain rebuilds the event using fragments of the original, plus your current beliefs, emotions, and any new information you've picked up since then. Psychologist Elizabeth Loftus and others have shown how easy it is to distort people's memories. In one famous study, participants watched a video of a car accident. Later, simply changing one verb in a question, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other versus when they hit each other, changed people's speed estimates and even whether they remembered seeing broken glass that wasn't there. Over time, repeated suggestions or misinformation can create false memories. Detailed, vivid recollections of things that never actually happened that way. What does this mean outside the lab?
That argument you know happened exactly that way, your brain may have quietly edited it. The childhood story you swear by might be a blend of family tales, photos, and imagination. Two people can remember the same event very differently, and both are convinced they're right. This doesn't mean your entire past is fake. It means your brain prioritizes meaning and coherence over perfect accuracy. It keeps the story that makes the most sense to you. And here's the kicker. Because our memories are reconstructed, the end and the peak moments of an experience hijack how we remember the whole thing. Which brings us straight into one of the strangest findings in psychology. Imagine two unpleasant experiences. In the first one, something hurts a lot for 60 seconds and then stops. In the second, it hurts the same amount for 60 seconds and then continues for another 30 seconds, but slightly less intensely. Logically, the second experience is worse. More total pain, longer duration. But in experiments, people often prefer the longer one when they choose which to repeat. Why? Because your brain doesn't judge an experience by every moment. It heavily weights the peak, the most intense point, and the end. This shortcut is called the peak-end rule. If the ending of an unpleasant event is less bad, you might remember the whole thing as more tolerable, even if you objectively endured more discomfort. This rule shows up everywhere. In relationships, you might remember the dramatic highs in the breakup more than years of average days. In trips, a great final day can redeem a mediocre vacation. In customer experiences, the last few minutes of a call or visit strongly shape how you rate the whole thing. Here's where this gets useful. You can hack this. If you're ending something important, an event, a date, a work day with your team, invest a little energy in making the ending feel calm, kind, or positive. People's remembered impression will lean heavily on that. And it also means when you look back on your own life, you're not replaying a full movie. You're replaying highlights plus the last scene. But there's still a piece missing. Why does the brain play these weird reward and memory games at all? For that, we need to talk about dopamine and the fact that your brain is obsessed with prediction errors. We love to blame everything on dopamine. That's my dopamine hit. But one of the most important things dopamine neurons encode is something called a reward prediction error. Basically, the difference between what you expected and what you actually got. In classic experiments, neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz recorded activity from dopamine neurons in animals. At first, the neurons fired when the animal got an unexpected reward. Later, once the reward became predictable, the dopamine spike moved earlier to the cue that predicted the reward, not the reward itself. If the expected reward didn't arrive, dopamine activity actually dipped below baseline. Translation: your brain is heavily tuned to surprises, good or bad. It's constantly asking, was that better or worse than I thought? And adjusting your learning and motivation. That's why anticipation, waiting for a text, a package, a release, can feel more intense than the thing itself. Variable rewards like notifications, slot machines, or social media likes are so habit-forming. The uncertainty is the point. When something you expected doesn't happen, it feels weirdly deflating, even if nothing bad actually occurred. From a survival perspective, this makes sense. A brain that learns from better than expected and worse than expected quickly is a brain that adapts. But it also means your behavior is quietly nudged by prediction errors all day long. You chase the next maybe, the next what if, the next potential hit of better than I thought. And this brings us to one more behavior quirk that creators, apps, and even your own to-do list use on you all the time.
Think about a project you've been putting off forever. The weird thing is, you probably think about it more than things you've already finished. That nagging feeling has been described for about a century as the Zeigarnik Effect. The idea that we tend to remember unfinished or interrupted tasks better than completed ones. The original observations came from a simple situation. A waiter who could remember everyone's unpaid orders perfectly, but forgot them once the bill was settled. Later research added a nuance. We don't just remember unfinished tasks, we also feel a strong urge to resume them. That drive to come back and finish something is sometimes called the Zeigarnik Effect. Every cliffhanger at the end of a TV episode, every progress bar stuck at 90%, every "you're almost done, just one step left" message is exploiting this open-loop tension. You're feeling a mild version of it right now, actually. At the start of this video, I promised you amazing psychological facts about human behavior and hinted that we'd connect them, not just list them. Your brain has been tracking that open loop in the background. So, let's close it. Here's one last fact that ties together a lot of what we've talked about: your limited social bandwidth, your emotional brain, and your biased attention. Psychologists have found that people are often more willing to help a single identifiable person in need than a large group of anonymous victims. This is called the identifiable victim effect. In experiments, participants donated significantly more to help one named child with a photo than to help a statistical description of thousands in the same situation. Even when the group was identified, the emotional pull of a single face often beat the logic of more people need help. Combine this with Dunbar's number, you're wired for a limited circle of real humans, social pain, your brain treats other people's exclusion as deeply meaningful, and frequency illusion. Once a single story hits you, you start seeing versions of it everywhere. And you get a brain that is powerful, caring, but also uneven. It can cry over one tragic story and scroll past statistics of massive suffering. This isn't to make you feel guilty. It's to show you that your compassion, your attention, your choices, they're all filtered through a very human, very biased system. Understanding that is the first step to using it on purpose.
Let's rewind everything you just learned and see how it fits into one picture of human behavior. You overestimate how much others notice you, spotlight effect, while your own attention system is quietly deciding what you notice, often without asking permission. Your brain treats social rejection like physical pain, because for most of history, being excluded really was dangerous. You're built for about 150 meaningful relationships, no matter how many followers you collect. Your memory is a storyteller, not a camera. It edits, fills gaps, and rewrites based on what makes sense now. Your experiences by their peak and their ending, not by every second you live through. Your motivation system runs on prediction errors, writing up for surprises and possibilities more than predictable outcomes. Unfinished tasks and open loops tug on your mind, nudging you to come back and complete them. And emotionally, a single face can move you more than a statistic because your brain was built for tribes, not spreadsheets. So what do you actually do with all this? You can be kinder to yourself in social situations, knowing you're not under as much scrutiny as you feel. Recognize when your pain system is overfiring on small social cues and consciously dial down the story. Invest deeply into your closest circle instead of chasing infinite shallow connections. Question your memories, especially when you're using them as evidence in a conflict. Design your own experiences, days, projects, even conversations, to end well, because future you will remember that more than the messy middle. And most importantly, you can catch your brain in the act, seeing patterns that aren't really there, chasing unpredictable rewards, getting haunted by open loops. The amazing part isn't that the brain is biased or weird. The amazing part is that once you see these patterns, you gain just enough distance to choose differently. You can still be human, emotional, irrational, beautifully inconsistent, but a human who knows the game their brain is playing. And now that you know these psychological facts, pay attention to the rest of your day. Notice how many times your brain tries one of these tricks on you. Spoiler, once you've seen them, you'll start to spot them everywhere.